I recently moved into an old apartment building in Vienna. Though the infrastructure is a bit run down, I didn't mind too much. It's quiet here, which matters to me. I'm a writer. My work is sensitive to noise. It easily breaks my thought flow. The apartment next to mine belongs to Elisa, a very friendly single mother. Her son, Lucas, is around 8 years old, well-mannered and polite. At the end of the hallway lives Konrad Weiss, a man in his late 20s, tall and thin, with hair that always covers his face. No one knows what he does for a living. He keeps to himself, rarely speaks to anyone. We only ever spoke once a few days ago. It was the night of a blood moon. I went out onto the communal balcony to get a good view and snap some photos. As I raised my phone to capture the moon, I noticed Konrad had appeared in the corner of my frame, startling me a bit. It was the first time I'd seen him outside. So he likes blood moons too. He looked unwound, leaning against the railing, holding a glass filled with a deep red liquid that shimmered under the moonlight. A cold metallic scent drifted past me on the breeze that chilled down my spine. Not wanting to be awkward, I walked over and joked, "Red wine under the moonlight? You're more sophisticated than I expected."
It's not wine, but yes, the moon pairs nicely with it.
I had no idea what he meant. I just forced a chuckle and went back inside without another word. A few weeks after I moved in, the city was shaken by a string of strange deaths. Cats and dogs were found in dark alleys, completely drained of blood, their bodies shriveled. Then it was people. 3 victims in 1 week, all found inside their own homes. No signs of forced entry. The media called it the Vienna bite. Theories range from a deranged killer to cult rituals. I felt a creeping fear. That night, I made sure my door was securely locked before heading to bed. But around midnight, I heard it. The faint, slow sound of someone turning my doorknob. The metal handle twisted ever so slightly, then stopped. I couldn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I told Elisa what happened. She didn't believe me. She just gave me a nervous laugh and said I was letting the news get to me, imagining things. I wasn't so sure. My instincts told me otherwise. And that very day, Lucas went missing. Eliza had stepped out without locking the door, leaving Lucas at home alone. When she returned, he was gone. She called the police immediately.
It's my fault. I should have watched him more carefully. Do you think he was taken and drained like the others?
Drained? Something stirred in my gut. When the police arrived, I told them to check Konrad's apartment. They broke down the door, and what we saw was a glimpse of hell. Dozens of blood bags, jars of organs floating in strange fluids, a notebook filled with detailed entries on each victim, and in the center of the room, a bed. Lucas was there, unconscious but alive. His mouth was taped shut, his wrists and ankles bound. Thank God he was still breathing. In the inner room, they found Konrad. He was asleep, standing upright in a coffin, arms folded across his chest. Konrad was arrested. He showed no remorse. He was diagnosed with paranoid delusions. He claimed to be a vampire, said he needed to consume blood to prevent his body from decaying. He had killed others before moving to our area. Eventually, he was sentenced to life in prison. It's a fitting end. After that, Lucas suffered serious psychological trauma. Elisa decided to move away to get better care for him. He stopped talking to me the way he used to. His eyes seemed deep, hollow. I stayed behind, still living here, and still writing. But now and then, around 3 a.m., I swear I hear the slow, deliberate turn of a doorknob.
I am Anna, 19 years old this year. I just passed the university entrance exam and moved to the city to study. The first time stepping into the big city, everything was unfamiliar to me. I thought I would have interesting experiences here, but the first memory of this place was something I could never have expected. I rented a room deep in a small alley, about a 10-minute walk from the university. The dormitory is old, with peeling walls, a narrow and dark hallway. The landlady is a woman in her 50s, and she led me to a room on the second floor. At the end of the hallway, the small room appears before me with a simple wooden bed against the wall, an old study table, and a small window overlooking the hallway.
This room is a bit old, but very clean and quiet. What do you think?
I think it's quite nice. May I ask, is anyone staying in the room across the hall?
That room is empty. No one has stayed there yet. You clean the room, and if you need anything, just call me, okay?
I quickly tidied up the room, and once I was done, it was already dark outside. The dormitory was very quiet at night, and I could hardly hear the bustling traffic on the street. I lay on the bed, exhausted, and quickly drifted off to sleep. I vaguely heard footsteps in the hallway. Perhaps someone had just returned to their room, so I didn't pay much attention and continued to sleep. The next day, I was preparing the content for the presentation, and I was so focused on writing that I lost track of time. Pick up the phone to check. It's already 00:00 p.m. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps clattering in the hallway. I wondered who could still be walking around outside at this hour. I looked out the window, but the corridor was quiet and empty. A chill ran down my spine. I quickly shut the window and rushed to bed. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the sound of children playing, and there were whispers of people talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. Those sounds seemed to be right outside my room. Is anyone there? I called out, but all I received was an invisible silence, a chilling atmosphere enveloping the entire room. I fearfully turned to look out the window. Suddenly, I saw a shadow standing outside the window, a hazy silhouette. Only part of the face could be seen staring at her. The next morning, I decided to tell the landlady about my experiences over the past few days.
It could just be the sound of a cat. There are a lot of homeless cats in this region at night.
Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?
You must be so exhausted that you're only having nightmares.
I wanted to leave this place, but finding affordable accommodation in the city was difficult. If I were to move out now, I wouldn't know where to go. If those sounds stopped completely, I thought I might be able to stay a little longer. A few days later, I no longer heard those strange sounds. Perhaps the landlady did something to keep them from bothering me. If those sounds completely disappear, I think I could stay here a bit longer. At midnight, I suddenly heard a knock on the door. I got up, stepped outside, and opened it, but no one was there. As I looked around, I noticed a man standing motionless not far away, his back turned to me. A chill ran down my spine as I slowly walked towards the man and called out, "Is anyone there?"
Get out of here. You are not allowed to stay here.
Why am I not allowed to be here? Who are you? The man slowly turned around, the light from the bulb revealing a gruesome, bloodied face, an image I could never forget. Seeing that image, I screamed in fear. But looking around, it was the familiar room again. It turns out everything was just a dream. Suddenly, a knocking sound echoed. I didn't know who was knocking on my door in the middle of the night like that. I began to fear and secretly thought, Could it be them? The people in the room opposite? Who is it? Who's out there? The knocking continued to grow louder, as if the person outside was about to break the door down. I was terrified, staring at the door without daring to breathe heavily.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
I knew that if I stayed, even more terrifying things awaited me.
When I woke up, it was already bright outside, and the door was still tightly shut as if nothing had happened. I quickly took everything I had and left this horrible house.
I had a feeling that if I stayed any longer, even more terrifying things would await me.
The man and that room remain a mystery to me. But after everything that has happened, I no longer dare to return to that boarding house again.
Have you ever left a bad review for an order? I never thought that a bad online review could drag me into hell. Hello, my name is Emily, 25 years old, a horror fiction writer for a renowned publishing company. I had written countless terrifying stories, but I never imagined that one day I would become the character in a real-life horror tale. It all started last month when I ordered dinner from a small, newly opened restaurant near my apartment building. Starving, I eagerly opened the food container, but the moment I did, a foul, nauseating smell hit me, making me rush to the bathroom to vomit. Even more horrifying, inside the container was something that looked like a decomposing human finger. Terrified, I immediately threw the food into the trash and left a 1-star review for the restaurant. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Shortly after, I received a message from the restaurant owner. I can refund your money, Kyle, but it will cost you your life in exchange. I shivered at the words on my screen. Was this some sick joke or a real threat? My building had no security. So if the restaurant owner really wanted revenge, he could come straight to my apartment. After thinking carefully, I decided to stay overnight in the room of Helen, my colleague who lived upstairs, to avoid trouble. I had a camera installed outside my door so I could monitor my apartment through my phone. Looking at the screen, I saw a tall man wearing black sportswear and a baseball cap standing in front of my door. I wanted to tell Helen, but she was too focused on texting someone, seemingly unaware of my distress. Suddenly, the man looked directly at the camera, mumbling something under his breath. A large, deep scar ran down his cheek, making him look terrifying. He licked his lips, smirked with satisfaction, and then made a throat-slitting gesture before turning away. I trembled as I stared at my phone screen. What was he planning? I turned to Helen and realized she had been staring at me the whole time. Her gaze gave me an eerie feeling, as if something sinister was about to happen. I forced a smile and asked, "Helen, is something wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Helen smiled slightly and said,
"Oh, it's nothing."
I nervously reached for my glass of water but accidentally spilled it on a notebook on the table. Hurriedly, I picked up the notebook to dry it, but a photo slipped out and fell to the floor. When I bent down to pick it up, my heart nearly stopped. In the picture was Helen smiling brightly next to the very same man who had stood outside my door. A horrifying realization struck me. Helen was the one who had recommended this restaurant to me. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Helen glanced at me before standing up to answer it. Sensing that something was wrong, I quickly opened Facebook and secretly started a live stream before hiding my phone. Helen soon returned, followed by the man from earlier. I placed my phone on the table and looked at them in fear. "Helen, who is this?" Helen smiled slightly and said,
"This is my boyfriend, the owner of the restaurant you rated 1 star.
I stammered. "What do you mean? Did you plan all of this?" Helen burst into laughter and said,
That's right. I hate your fake perfection. You took everything that should have been mine."
Then she suddenly slapped me hard across the face. A burning pain spread across my cheek, making my head spin. Helen pointed at me in anger and shouted,
I was supposed to be the best writer. How dare a newcomer like you surpass me?
Before I could react, Helen grabbed my collar and repeatedly struck me in the face. Each blow landed heavily, making my head spin as my vision gradually blurred from the throbbing pain. I struggled to stand and asked, "If you hate me so much, why did you let me stay here?" Helen laughed hysterically and said,
Because I wanted to see you suffer, to watch you beg for mercy right in front of me.
Enraged, I shouted, "Keep dreaming! You're just a failure! Don't blame others for your incompetence!" The restaurant owner suddenly lunged forward and punched me hard in the stomach, sending me crashing onto the floor. Before I could recover, he pulled out a knife and slashed a deep cut across my shoulder. I screamed in pain, clutching my wound as warm blood soaked through my thin shirt. Helen stood over me laughing.
Emily, beg me, and I'll let you die painlessly.
Through gritted teeth, I spat back. I will never beg a loser like you. Furious, Helen snatched the knife from her boyfriend's hand and lunged at me. Just as I thought it was the end for me, a loud, urgent knocking sounded at the door. Helen froze, turning her face toward the door, silently observing the commotion outside. Sensing my chance, I immediately sprang up, kicked Helen away, and sprinted toward the door. Standing outside was Lucy, my close colleague from work, her face filled with panic. Lucy quickly caught me and asked worriedly,
Emily, are you okay?
I gasped, "Help me! Helen wants to kill me!" Before I could explain further, Helen shouted angrily,
Don't think you can escape from here.
She gripped the knife tightly and charged at us, her bloodshot eyes filled with madness. Lucy and I froze in fear as Helen's twisted expression made her look like a completely different person. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind us. Police officers had arrived. It turned out that when Lucy saw my live stream, she immediately called the police and rushed to my place. Helen and the restaurant owner were swiftly restrained and taken away before they could fight back. I let out a sigh of relief, but as the adrenaline faded, pain overwhelmed my body. Exhausted, I lost consciousness and sank into darkness. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital, my wounds carefully bandaged. This nightmare was finally over, but the scars it left behind would haunt me forever. Have you ever done something so terrible that you created false memories to hide the truth? I am Luna, living with my husband in a suburban neighborhood. That afternoon, while watering the flowers, I noticed signs that the soil in the garden had been disturbed, as though someone had tried to bury something beneath it. I immediately grabbed a shovel and dug up the soil, but found nothing.
What are you doing?
At that moment, the new neighbor, who had just moved in, walked by and struck up a conversation with me. I was just planning to plant some flowers. Is there something you need?
I've just moved here and don't know anyone. I saw you in the garden and thought I'd come over and chat for a bit.
After he said that, he approached and touched my hand, which made me flinch and step back in fear. Just then, my husband returned home. I quickly said goodbye to the neighbor and went inside with my husband. That evening, when I told my husband, he seemed irritated and said I was being overly suspicious. I couldn't sleep, as an uneasy feeling rose in my chest. I had barely fallen asleep when I suddenly woke up gasping for air. My husband's face was right next to mine, his hands tightly around my neck, his eyes filled with hatred.
Give me back my life.
I struggled, feeling suffocated, nearly choking from the pressure. When I snapped awake in panic, my husband was no longer beside me. I looked at the clock. It was 9 a.m. He must have gone to work already. I decided to go out into the garden to get some fresh air and shake off the terrifying feeling. As soon as I opened the door, I saw the neighbor and his wife standing outside.
Hello. We're planning to renovate our house. We wanted to come over and get some ideas on how you decorate your home. Would that be all right?
So, he had a family. My husband was right. I had just overthought everything. Of course, come on in. But once inside, I had the unsettling feeling that they were looking for something. It made me feel confused and uncomfortable. When we entered the kitchen, the neighbor opened the refrigerator and his expression changed instantly. He turned to his wife and screamed that there was a body in the fridge. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my head, and countless memories flooded back. A few days earlier, I had discovered my husband's affair, and during an argument, I had unintentionally killed him. To avoid being caught, I hid the body in the fridge and dug up the garden to bury it. But overwhelmed with grief, I had completely forgotten what I had done. I began to have hallucinations, believing my husband was still by my side.